Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of From a Woman to a Leader. I'm super excited to host today Katherine McCord, and we're going to talk about thriving through neurodiversity, unleashing the power of inclusion in tech. Obviously, you all know that inclusion is a big topic and that is near and dear to my heart. So I'm super excited to speak with Katherine. But before we start, let me quickly introduce Katherine. And I hope it's okay, Katherine. I kind of looking at your LinkedIn, I really loved your about section. So hear me out. So Katherine said, I live to fulfill my three missions: integrity, innovation, and inclusion. She also said, I went from being the little girl that played interview and at the age of 5, fired her mother, just kidding, to the woman that has 2 scissors and still gets up on stage from her big speech. And Katherine said she is neurodiverse, and we're going to talk more about it, and physically diverse, and she's successful with her diversity, not in spite of it. And in several ways, her neurodiversity has even helped her accelerate her career. So thank you so much for being here, Katherine.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. And I love how you read my bio, by the way. That was
Oh,
fantastic. Thank you. The enthusiasm that you brought to it. That's now how I'm going to hear it when I present it to people in my
absolutely. Yeah,
head.
thank you. You know, I'm very excited because you bring we'll talk about it, but you bring a different angle of diversity and inclusion. And I think it's something we should talk more and more about. But before we start kind of touching deeper on neurodiversity, I wanted to ask you to share a little bit about your personal journey.
Of course, yes. And for anybody listening, just so that there's no further confusion, neurodiversity simply refers to a medically visible and or diagnosable difference in how a person processes information and stimuli. So think everything from traumatic brain injury and epilepsy over to ADHD, bipolar, obsessive compulsive disorder, et cetera, autism, et cetera, et cetera. So just anything that causes you to process differently. That's what that is. Um, my journey, I mean, you kind of hit some of it with the bio. So I was the little kid that was just always super curious and precocious and had 50 million questions for everybody. Um, I always assumed that everybody wanted to listen to my what I had to say, right? It never occurred to me that people weren't interested in what, a very small child had to say. My mother even tells a story about taking me to work with her when I was 2 and sitting me in her wait area. She just had to go pick something up real quick. She set me down in the wait area and I comes back out and I was looking at a man and I was been trying to get him to speak with me. And I said, "Excuse me, would you please respond to me?" A 2-year-old was like,
Wow.
the guy's over there like ignoring a 2-year-old. I'm just like, hello, pay attention. And so I was just always kind of that way. And then, fast forward a couple years later, and my parents started noticing different behaviors and would come in the room and be like, oh, well, that's interesting. She's got all of her toys a very particular way. If they tried to move them, I would become upset. I wanted them left exactly how I had, had them. Um, Things like that. That was the obsessive compulsive disorder coming out very early. And and that was kind of the first time. But my parents did something beautiful that tragically most parents do not, which is that they looked at this funny behavior from this little tiny human and just thought, all right, cool. This is how she is. We're going to help her work with who she is and no problem. And just never treated it as an issue or anything like that. So I didn't know that other people would perceive what was different about me as wrong until much later in life. I had no clue that other people viewed this as a defect. I had no idea about that. And so even when I got to be older and I was diagnosed with bipolar and and did all that, the same beautiful response from my parents. They just said, okay, no problem. We're just going to steer into it. We're going to help you learn how to take care of yourself. No big deal. And it was just kind of never an issue in my house, and part of that I think was um, my father's journey with his own mental health, which he's given me full permission to talk about, by the way. Um, and then my mother's very practical background in nursing and understanding how to take care of people. And they just kind of mapped out care for me, right? And then so fast forward, I was the little girl who played interview with my mommy and did fire her when I was 5, which was very rude. I don't even know what she did to deserve it. I did fire her. I used to sell, create little companies and sell shares to my family. That's just how I was, wired. And so I got older and had all kinds of careers. I was definitely a job hopper. So I don't see that as a negative thing. I actually, kind of am intrigued whenever I see that when somebody's obviously just trying to learn different things. And I would stay at a job for like a year and then just be like, all right, I mastered it. I'm bored. Next. And then I got into recruiting and loved it, but I realized how many things were wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I got into HR and I loved that, but I realized how many things were wrong. So I said, forget that. I can do it better. Struck out on my own. And that was in 2014. And since then, I have clients now internationally. That's new. It was a national consulting bit. I do have a team that of contractors that come in and help as needed. And then now I speak internationally as well. So that's a little
That's
bit about me.
incredible. Yeah, you have such an inspiring journey. And I wanted to ask you, obviously you were raised with parents who were very, very open-minded and supported you and treated you as you are.
Yeah, it it was really that simple for them. They were just like, "This is who you are. All right, cool. Let's just work with it." And I was never ever made to feel bad about how I was treated, like there was something wrong with me. None of that. There was never any sense of you are defective placed on me by my parents. And I don't know if it's just because of that, if it also has something to do with my hard wiring, but then I just kind of transformed into, okay, well, so there's definitely benefits to this. And now, thank God, the science and the medicine are catching up to that. They're also saying, yes, there is disability with this, but there's also these great benefits, right? Because that's how we're designed. We're designed that when there's an issue over here, we compensate over here. That's how our mind and bodies work. And so now, like Johns Hopkins, Harvard, all these, the the National Library of Medicine has multiple studies on it, as a matter of fact, talking about how the quote compensations are these incredible benefits. So, yes, somebody may struggle or have disability over here, but then their body and mind have gone, oh, okay, so we're going to be awesome over here. Like we have this little, glitch, but over here, we're going to be awesome. And just so we get creativity, 3D model thinking, um, predisposition to innovation, things like that. So it's really it's an interesting concept, and it's cool to see the rest of the world catch up with how I was raised. I know that
Yeah,
sounds almost arrogant, but it's kind of true. My parents did such a wonderful job that I feel like everybody else is catching up to them.
yeah, absolutely. And as a parent, I try as much as possible to embrace, everything that is
Yes.
happening and embrace that as a gift. I mean, even if, my daughter has an autoimmune disease, every child has something else, but I'm
Yes.
trying to look at it as a gift rather than as a curse, as a disability, as a problem. And I wanted
Yes.
to ask you, so you were raised in this wonderful environment, very supportive.
Mhm.
When was the first time you actually noticed that externally people treat it as, I don't know, disability, something
Right.
defective or whatever?
I don't remember the exact. I don't remember all the details. Let me put it that way. I don't remember all the details of the situation, but I was well into my school career the first time that I made the connection. I want to say maybe a sophomore in high school. And no, 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 I take that back. No, the first time was back in junior high. And because the teacher that I'm remembering, it would have been junior high. So maybe eighth grade. And this teacher looked at me and said, well, you shouldn't do things that way. That's that's not normal. Let's do it a different way. And I looked at him like, excuse me. It was the first time that someone directly said to me, like, what you're doing is not how you ought to be doing it. Do it this other way. Now, me being me, I looked at them and said, well, too bad. This is how I do it. And I'm still getting the correct answer. So just deal with it. But that's just me, right? And thank God again for my parents for instilling that in me as well and backing that up. But that was the first time. So I was a teenager. I would have been, I guess, about 13 then. So it took 13 years of life, and then finally somebody said something and I was like, and because of how I had been raised, I was just kind of like, no, I'm fine over here. Thank you. People have asked, was I bullied? Was I, anything like that? And no, the answer to that was no. So I never had any of that. I didn't. I have actually I get teased more. So I have six invisible disabilities. Some of them are strictly medical, so I have two autoimmunes too. So I understand where your daughter's coming from. Um, and then I have and one of them is a bladder condition, and I would get teased more about that than which
Mm,
was fine. I like to laugh about it too. And I want to be clear, the people teasing me were people that knew that they could, right? It was a
yeah.
friendly, like, we're trying to help you through it kind of way, right? So I would get poked at about that, and then a few rude comments here and there on that, more than anything else. Like the OCD and all that, I would just tell people about it, and I would just tell people, other things, and then they would just be like, "All right, cool," and just kind of roll with it. So I don't know. I don't know. I just didn't have um I didn't have that bullying experience. My mother says it's because I'm like her and people just don't try it because they know that I won't take it, right?
Hmm.
So maybe there's something to that. I don't know. I don't know why I didn't experience. Maybe it's just the confidence in how I presented it and just like was like, hey, this is just how I am, whatever. I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
why, but
So
that,
obviously,
yeah,
the fact that you were raised by a supportive parents,
yes,
um,
huge point of
con
privilege. Huge.
contributed to that, until you were 13, you haven't even realized that you may have some qualities that are different than other people.
Well, I knew I was different, but I didn't know it was a bad thing.
Ah,
Yeah,
it's
like
not a
it
bad thing. It's
never
just
occurred to
different.
me that it was
That's the
right.
thing. I don't see that as
To
a
other
bad thing.
people, yeah, like yeah,
Yeah.
to me, I was just like, oh, I'm just different. That was the first time somebody treated me like it was bad. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, what advice would you give to someone with disability or disabilities that may may not have been so fortunate to
Ugh.
be raised in such supportive environment, and they have a lot of their own limiting beliefs and in-confidence
Yeah.
issues about their disabilities? What kind of advice would you give them?
The first thing, and I get asked this a lot, and it does come up all the time. I have people reach out to me all the time after they've heard me speak or after a class, and I start with your research. Do your research, look up, and I give them some specific studies that, if I'm aware of any that pertain to their exact diagnosis. And I start them there, and then they let them go down the rabbit hole a little bit. And I say, so do that, get the science in your brain, because that will start to deprogram your own biases about yourself. And I introduce them to some other people. And you can do this for yourself too, right? So you can do your own research. You can get on LinkedIn or podcasts or whatever and meet these humans yourself, or reach out to me. I'm also glad to make the intros. Um, Meet some people who are happy with their diagnoses. Meet some people, meet the other side of it, because yes, there is the disability and there are the days that it stinks and there are the moments that it's difficult, but there is the other side. That's just, again, now where the science is caught up, right? Now it's becoming fact. And so, just reach out to the humans that are happy. Listen to them. Even if you don't want to talk to them, if you're a little bit more of an introvert, that's fine. Listen to the podcast and such. Listen to the people that are happy and have learned to manage it in a way that's successful for them, have learned to find the benefits. See those positive examples, because again, you're debunking the myths that are in your own brain, right? And I had to do this with some of my physical stuff. So I have been on this journey myself. So with my physical diagnoses, I very much had to do this to get myself out of the funk about them. Um, and then the final step is finding your tribe, your people, not just the people over here who are talking about it, which can also be part of your tribe too. But build up your tribe of people that know that you're great the way that you are, and that will support you. Some of them should also be diverse in a similar way to you. Doesn't have to be exact, but similar. And some of them can just be random humans in your life that just get it, right? That just understand. And surround yourself with those people. Those people should be the primary voices in your ear, and then move on. And if your family is still not getting it, um, educate them as best you can. Send them articles, send them podcasts. Make sure they understand it's important to you that they participate in this. If they're not getting it, this sounds harsh, but trust me, it works. Fire them, get them out of your life. I mean, it works. I've done it for different reasons other than this typically, but I've had to fire a couple people out of my life for trying to limit me and impose disability on me that's not there. There is disability, but they would try to limit me, and I would be like, nope, do not need, goodbye. And some of them are still in my life in a limited capacity, and some of them have been just completely fired. So that's also part of it, is you have to get rid of the toxic humans.
Absolutely. And that is true to everyone, not just
Oh
someone with
yeah.
disability, for sure.
Yes, everybody should fire toxic people. Just get them out, get them away 100%.
Yeah, I think it becomes more challenging when those are close family members. They may not
Oh
be
yeah.
toxin, but sometimes it's they may not be understanding you or supporting you. And it's, I mean, I
And it
don't know.
hurts. It hurts.
Yeah.
I had to let go of somebody who was basically a sibling to me growing up, who is blood related and not technically my sibling, but was basically a sibling growing up at one point. And then I also had to let go of my best friend of 24 years at one point. And uh, that one was for different ethical beliefs,
Hmm.
but that and some weird things that she started supporting. But it hurts. It does hurt to let those people go. But let me tell you, as someone who's been on the other side, it ends up so much better. And you end up so much in such a better, healthier place. Not just happier, but healthier place.
Yeah. And my strategy to eliminate toxins, a lot of times is just not saying, get out of my life, or saying that, that may feel very uncomfortable, but just stepping back,
Oh
trying
yeah.
to,
You can
okay,
give
I
them a
cannot
limited
meet.
place.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You can have a limited place for them. There are people in my life like that, that they're over here, and we still have a little bit of contact, maybe see each other like once a year, something like that, but very limited, because day to
Yeah.
day it's not going to work out for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, there's different ways. It's whatever boundary you need.
Yeah.
And it can fluctuate, right? It can fluctuate what you need, even with a certain person. So just reevaluate. That's what I always tell people: constantly reevaluate your relationships, all of them, constantly reevaluate them. Where am I? Have my needs changed? What do I need to adjust for them? Am I being that person that's not being supportive? And kind of catching yourself, because man, sometimes you realize you've gotten busy and you're being a bad friend. That's not a good
Yeah.
moment.
Those are great tips. I wanted to switch gears and talk a little bit about your professional life. So you mentioned you started working and you fell in love with HR and recruiting, but you said like it was wrong, like the way it was
Yeah.
done was wrong. So can you share a little bit about it?
Yeah. And I think, a lot of people are more aware of this now, because there, so much LinkedIn activity on this. There were so many shows and so much talk about it during COVID, which was wonderful. The HR along the way became not about humans. Like, it kind of started one way, then it became something else, and then it changed again. And now we're back to like, oh, it's not about humans, which is really weird since the word human is in the title, but that's what happened. And so it became very non-human centric, and people were being treated like potential assets, like almost like items that could be acquired, which was just gross to me. And this wasn't just a company I worked with. I have seen this so many times I can't even count, hundreds upon hundreds of times over. I've witnessed this, and it's crazy to me. Our hiring process is utterly ridiculous and makes next to no sense. Um, and then when we have the humans in, we hire people because we think that their talents are so cool and we think they can contribute. But then we tell them, but you need to work inside of my box. And that doesn't work. That's not how it works. If you want to cultivate talent, you have to support it as it is, as it exists, right? kind of going back to that lesson that my parents taught me, right? You have to treat them as they are, as their individual self. So, letting them work in ways that are natural to them, so on and so forth. So I got into it and said, okay, so from start to finish, here's the ways that we bring the human element back into it, and really started pushing for that. Some of the basic things that I do is starting in the hiring process, making accommodations standard options. We change it from you need to make this request and have all this hoopla to just here it is. Here's all the things that we offer. And then here's, some, and then fill in a blank, right? If you need that. If anybody wants to see what this looks like, Inclusively does a beautiful job, and you can sign up as a member there and just kind of fill out a profile and see everything that they're doing. They do that beautifully. Um, I started working with companies about making even their technology more accessible and their application process more acceptable. I taught them not to care so much about resumes, uh, how to interview to set the person up for success rather than, boxing them in and trying to trick them or making it stressful or whatever it was that they were doing wrong. And then just kind of so on and so forth from there. And kind of bringing the humanity back. And even in their
Yeah.
branding, like how many companies do you see that only sell with their brand? Well, instead of that, talk about who you are, how you are, and what your ethics are, and all of that connect to the humans.
Yeah, I think more and more companies now put emphasis around that, about the core values, about the company culture, about, what is important for them as a company, but not enough, and also not always it it really
Right,
reflects in the
right,
way they
exactly.
actually operate.
Yeah,
And
they don't cultivate it. That's the
yeah,
problem. Like the
yeah,
initial thought is there, but then it just kind of drifts away.
yeah. And that's why kind of you started Titan Management, right? You wanted to make a
Hmm.
difference in HR
Yes.
and recruiting.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. For everything, I call it people operations now. Just everything start to finish. That's what we do. And it's fun. It's fun work and it's hard work. And it's so funny because I have a lot of people that will get upset because they don't like to hear about the business case of inclusion, right? I'm like, well, but that's how you get CEOs on board, right? And you have to have metrics and things that they can see and things that are tangible because that's how you get them to continue the work. So that's the kind of less fun part of it, right? And I wish that you could just get people to do things because integrity, but that's not it's not how it works. So you
Yeah.
kind of have to build the case and show them, and then the rest of the stuff comes, and then they just start to trust you and roll with it.
So can you provide some insights into designing inclusive work environment?
Yes. Number one, involve many different voices, many, many different. You can't just have one person. So even when I come into an organization, I'm not the only just part of the decision making process. I bring in some voices. We listen to voices across the company. And some of my clients are very small, right? Because they want to start this from the beginning. So there aren't so many voices in there actually in their company. So we bring in some in from outside. Even with larger companies, I like to bring voices in from outside, right? Um, and we listen to them, and we take that feedback into account, and then we kind of move forward from there. So the first thing is you start with ask your humans, what do you need, what's important for you, what would help you to work better. These are the things. Sometimes you have to show examples because sadly human beings have not been taught to take care of themselves, and they've not been taught to work naturally, right? So sometimes have some examples, things like that, but start by asking and then doing all of it. And people go, "What? That's going to be so much work." It's actually not. It's
Hmm.
really not. I know because I've done it. I've actually designed a software product this way from start to finish. And it sounds cumbersome, but it's not. It's always just little adjustments and working their feedback in. And the feedback may not end up manifesting the exact way that the person presented it, but you can always work it in. And this also then creates psychological safety naturally, right? Because people are seeing that their feedback matters and it's being implemented. And so kind of moving that through. So as you create these processes, you're building the psychological safety that's required, right? You're building trust with your people so that they will come to you if there's a problem. They know that you'll take feedback and actually adjust for them. So they actually start to build trust as well. And then you kind of, move forward. Um, and then make sure that your hiring process is fully inclusive, which starts with your technology. And people miss that all the time. Companies miss that. I'll go through and their applicant tracking system is a disaster. It's just the questions are not friendly. It's not good for neurodiverse people. There's nothing in there for people with different physical disabilities. It's just a nightmare. So fix all of that. Make sure everything's in line. Make sure that your hiring process is flexible. That's a big thing, is flexibility, right? You have to
Yeah.
be flexible. And the biggest thing is, and I actually start off by teaching classes on this and then putting systems in place to perpetuate it, is teaching people to break their natural ego defense and respond in curiosity. So the brain naturally, whenever you hear something that's incorrect, throws up defenses, or that's different, excuse me, when you hear something that's different from how you think or how you believe, your brain automatically throws up defenses as to why you're right. That's a naturally occurring phenomenon. So if you learn to break that and to say, no, thank you, brain, we're going to learn about this today, and respond in curiosity by saying something like, tell me more about that. Number one, you're going to learn more than you ever thought, and your world just opens up, right? It just completely opens up. Number two, you're going to breed inclusion, because when you respond like that and then you respond by implementing the feedback, you're going to automatically build inclusion, because people will tell you along the way that this doesn't work, but most companies shut it down. Most humans shut it down.
Yeah.
So instead, respond with curiosity. And then the other thing that you're going to do is leave the shame and blame behind, which, trust me, I get just wanting to look at somebody and go, you're a jerk, you're being, racist, sexist, ableist, whatever in the world it is, right? Homophobic, whatever it is, and just say, and to just dismiss them. But when you stop and you listen and you come to understand them, and I learned this concept very well from Celia Daniels and Seth Butler. So I want to give a shout out to those two glorious humans. Um, when you respond and actually learn to understand the human, you can help correct the problems that are there. So responding in curiosity, not ego, is another huge part from the bottom up to the very, very top of a company.
Absolutely. Not ego, not judgment, no opinion,
Right,
no bias, right? I
right,
mean,
right.
simply
Just
just being
listen.
curious.
Just listen, ask all the questions, come to understand them, say, okay, I hear you there. Okay, can I have more clarification here? And just kind of proceed that way, right? And sometimes you need to step away first and breathe and
Yeah,
have a meeting about it in 15 to 30 minutes after you've kind of processed it. And that is just fine. Give yourself grace to process those emotions. But the only way that we're going to see real change is to do that. Now, if somebody's just not getting on board, if they just keep, doing gross things or offensive things, or if what they're doing is so egregious, sometimes you just have to let them go. But as much as you can, respond in curiosity, not ego, and actually help fix the problem.
absolutely. So if companies are interested in becoming more inclusive, what should they do?
If
They
just in
should,
general,
with
or
regards to if they want to hire your
oh, if they want
services,
to
I
work
mean,
with me.
yeah,
Oh, yeah. That's easy. Well, first of all, I'm on LinkedIn all the time. You can find me on LinkedIn, connect me there, ask questions, get to know me a little bit. Also, you can go to my site, titanmanagementusa.com.
perfect. This is perfect. You shared so much value. Thank you so much. I definitely
Thank
want
you.
everyone to reach out to you and hire you so we can have a more inclusive culture and more tolerant culture.
Absolutely, 100%. And by the way, I want to throw out there too, even if you're an individual who listened to this and thought, man, I really want to, get in a better place with my own disabilities and I want to start building my tribe, feel free to reach out to me for that too.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure,
Thank
Katherine.
you. I enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.